I'm going to give each group 5 minutes to look at your text-dependent question, come up with your ideas and your supporting evidence to support those ideas. In 5 minutes, I am going to pull your group's document up onto my screen so we can take a look at your response and your evidence together. You have 5 minutes, go ahead.
Isn't Evans from the time
That because it directly shows how he was offended by.
Where's page 4? Is that?
Oh, yeah, sure.
So we're copying. I'm looking for a ball player who's the good to fight back.
I found the part where he was offended.
Oh, you put it down?
There's also one, he says I could feel the color coming to my cheeks.
Oh yeah, when he gets all angry.
Yeah.
Does that really happen or was it a flashback?
No, it wasn't a flashback.
When he cut him, like how do you like that? That one?
I think that was like an example of like what would
Yeah.
happen.
As I feel the blood running down my leg, and I kind of laugh in my face. Is that like a real?
He's saying that he felt that during when it happened. It's not a flashback. Like
He says like suppose I was at shortstop.
Yeah, he was just thinking.
that was like an example.
He was saying, well, what if this happened? How would I react?
Oh, it did happen.
So,
That movie was so good.
how can we use this evidence to create our response? So, we can say that so the real question is, what evidence from the text supports the inference that Jackie Robinson was offended by Branch Rickey when he asked him if he had the guts to fight back, or not fight back? So he was upset because he was thinking, well, this guy asked me to come here, and he's meeting with me to be on a team, and then he asked me if I had guts, and that's kind of...
He thought that's like what everybody else asks. It's getting old.
And then also, it seemed like it was a test, because if he exploded and said, of course I have guts, are you seeing me here? I'm here right now talking to you about going into the team.
But he's talking about a Negro League. It's not. He thought they were talking about a Negro League. So when he heard
He
that,
told him before that.
oh really?
Yeah, he told him like basically right after he asked if he had a girl.
Oh, that's right.
So he knew, but he thinks, here we go again, this is Boston all over again, they're questioning me, they don't think I'm good enough.
Boston didn't even need to ask him the questions.
Yeah, they just kind of dismissed him. Yeah.
That part wasn't in the movie though.
Yeah.
It should have been.
Jack?
I was gonna say when I was reading, at least they tried. But then when he was like, yeah, I knew they weren't gonna do it, and I was like, wow. Boston really blew it.
Okay. So I bet they realized that right after.
They probably realized it during.
Yeah.
You like know what?
Right.
You have about 2 minutes before we share out. Okay, so we're working with the question on page 4. There's virtually nobody on our side. Why would Branch Rickey move forward with a plan when there's so much social opposition? What is social opposition?
That the social or the public is going to oppose to his decision.
Yes, exactly. And there's a lot of it, right? And Branch Rickey knows that. So why would he continue anyway?
Because sooner or later, the segregation will end. He might as well do it earlier, so less future generations shall suffer.
Okay, and where do you see that in the text? Anyone can answer. Where do we see that? He wants to do this for future generations. Where can we find specific evidence that would support that this is for the future? Oh. Share. This is your group. Share.
Well, it says
Where?
first page.
First page.
Oh,
Emily. Yes, this is your text.
I would want to know.
It was 35 years later while
was laying awake nights frustrated, unable to see the future. Mr. Ricky, by now the person in the doctor, was also laying awake at night trying to make up his mind about the new experiment.
Okay.
It's like he was so frustrated, like how they wouldn't accept him, and he just wanted to change it so they feel like they wouldn't be crying, like scratching themselves, and as upset as he was.
He knew, right? He had witnessed the power and the impact of this persecution and discrimination on players. He saw it firsthand, and he knew from that moment on that he wanted to make this change. And I'd like to point out a paragraph on page 4.
Evidence, you want to put the
In the second section, it starts with, "He had me transfixed as he spoke." Take a look at that paragraph and see if you can find specific evidence that may support your ideas for this answer in that paragraph. Nevin, do you have the right page?
Yeah.
Okay. So take a look right here and see if you can find evidence to support your
They don't want to stand up, so they don't try it, so they can escape support, like being called names. Yeah, that's good.
Okay, are we ready to share out in about a minute? Yeah. Okay, so Robinson, what he says, we go through life, oh, I love this question. So we go through life walking a tightrope. I love this sentence, actually. We go through life walking a tightrope to prevent too much disillusionment. What is disillusionment?
When you find out something's worse than it actually is.
Yes, you aren't really, you're not really sure about what's going on. Yeah, it's not knowing reality. So, what kind of disillusionment is he talking about for black people?
being called names.
Well, that is reality, right?
Being rejected.
Oh,
So what happened with the Red Sox?
He thought it was more bad than
So he could have showed up to that Red Sox tryout and said, yeah, they definitely want me. I'm going to make this team. But that would be being disillusioned, right? Because did the Red Sox actually want him on the team? No. No, and that's the tightrope. The tightrope is really a metaphor for what? What do you do on a tightrope?
Balance.
You balance. And what does he have to balance? What does he have to balance? Did he still go to the Red Sox tryout?
He has to balance his opportunities with his reality. I don't know.
That's exactly it. He has to balance his opportunities with his reality. Find evidence from the text that's going to support that idea that this tightrope means balancing opportunity with reality. He doesn't want to give up on things, but he doesn't want to become overexcited because he knows he doesn't want to be disillusioned. All right. Which group would like to start? I'll give you the opportunity to volunteer today. Not always. Thomas, thank you. Let me pull up your group's document. Thomas, could you please start by reading your question out loud?
On page 4, the author writes, "There is virtually nobody on our side. Why would Branch Rickey move forward with a plan when there was so much social opposition? Cite textual evidence to prove your answer."
Okay, so what did your group decide? And anyone from the group can share. It doesn't have to necessarily be Thomas. What did your group decide?
We decided that the reason why that he wanted he wanted black people to win Major League no matter that everybody, even though everybody ignored it, was because he saw how much pain that the Charlie went through that night, and how he tried to scratch his skin off, and he didn't want any other black people to go through that pain. He wanted to end, he wanted to start a new era for them. He was so frustrated. He started laying awake at nights.
So even though there is this great social opposition, and that might be an unfamiliar word, what is social opposition? I know this group probably knows because they would have looked that word up if they weren't sure. But for everyone else, what is social opposition? I can see some of you are using your definition tool. Juliana, what does that mean? It's when society is against you. Yes, absolutely. And who's against Branch Rickey at this point? Pretty much everybody, yeah. Everyone. Everyone in the public eye, but that's people of power, remember too. That would be the white public. That is the social opposition. They would not have wanted to see this happen. And so he carries on with this plan because he knows that he can make a change for the future. And I noticed down here that you brought in the description from page 4 about the box score. What is a box score? Go ahead, Nevin.
It's like the scorebook, like what's in it, all the stats and stuff.
And why does Branch Rickey bring up the box score?
Because, can I read this evidence?
You may.
So there's more than just playing. He said, I wish it meant only hits, runs, and errors. Only the things they put in the box score, because you know, yes, you would know, Robinson, that baseball box score is a democratic thing. It doesn't tell how big you are, what church you attend, what color you are, or how your father voted in the last election. It just tells the kind of baseball player you are on that particular day.
I think that's excellent evidence to support that Branch Rickey wanted to make a change. He knows that we should judge a person based on their talent, on the way they perform, and not necessarily the color of their skin. And I think that example from Branch and Jackie's conversation about the box score and what that represents is great evidence to support that idea. Another group who would like to share out next, Audrey, could you please go ahead and share your question first?
What evidence from the text supports the inference that Jackie Robinson was offended by Branch Rickey when he said, what I want to know is whether you have the guts? Why does Branch Rickey ask Jackie Robinson this question?
And what did your group come up with?
He said that Jackie Robinson immediately heated up with anger when Branch Rickey questioned his guts. He responded, Mr. Rickey, I asked, are you looking for a Negro who is afraid to fight back?
Can I pause you right there, Audrey? I love how this group incorporated their evidence into their response. Jackie Robinson immediately heated up with anger. He responded, Mr. Rickey, are you looking for a Negro who's afraid to fight back? That's an excellent use of evidence in a response. Very nice. Keep going.
He then states that he would never forget the way that Branch exploded. He had perceived the question wrong, in fact, completely on the other side of the spectrum. He needed to stay strong enough to keep his temper under control, but he believed that Mr. Rickey was questioning his ability to be strong in general. He reflected, here was a guy questioning my courage. That virtually amounted to him to asking me if I was a coward. I felt the heat coming up into my cheeks. He had been deceived before, and he was being cautious of this happening again.
Excellent response. He had been deceived before, and he was being cautious of this happening again. Branch Rickey has asked Jackie Robinson to come play for him, and the first question he asks is, do you have the courage? Do you have the guts? And yeah, this offended Jackie Robinson. And I can see that you have multiple pieces of evidence, that some of which was incorporated into your response. Here was a guy questioning my courage. That virtually amounted to him asking me if I was a coward. I felt the heat coming up into my cheeks. When you feel heat coming up into your cheeks, what does that usually mean? Go ahead, Peter.
That like you could mean you're embarrassed or like you're sad.
Sad, any kind of emotional response, right? We can tell that this is an emotional reaction. And he's offended, absolutely. Very nice. Caitlin, I'm gonna open your group's question. Would you read the question for me, please?
What does Robinson mean when he says of African Americans, we go through life walking a tightrope to prevent too much disillusionment? We thought that it meant that the tightrope is balancing his opportunity to be on a team versus like the reality.
Can you say that one more time? Because I think that's very well put. It's the
tightrope is balancing his opportunity versus reality.
Yeah. This metaphor of a tightrope, of black athletes and black people having to balance this tightrope of the reality of the situation and the opportunity. And what example from the text could you use to support that Jackie Robinson had to walk this tightrope? And anyone can answer that. What example does Robinson mention in the text of why he didn't really believe in every opportunity? Because what had happened prior to meeting Branch Rickey? Matt, do you remember?
He got asked to try out for the Boston Red Sox.
Yeah, and what happened at that tryout?
They weren't actually trying out to be on the team. They just did it for publicity.
They did it for publicity. And so this had an impact on Jackie Robinson and probably on other black athletes as well. And Caitlin mentions this balancing of opportunity but reality. So Matt, they knew that that probably wasn't a sincere tryout at the Red Sox, right? But they went anyway. Why?
Because
To everyone, why? If they didn't think that it was a real opportunity, if they were skeptics, why go? Audrey?
Well, we had said before that all African Americans were cautious, but they were open to opportunities that would be good for them.
They can't be, I believe in the text, it mentions being cynical, but not too cynical, to close the door on opportunities. Is this an opportunity
Yeah.
to play for the Red Sox? Sure. Is he going to show up thinking that he's definitely on that team?
No.
Probably not, Stephen. That's a little bit. That's the first bit of personality that we've really had today. You're all nervous with the cameras. I understand. Okay, thank you. Last group. Go ahead, Stephen. Read your question for me.
Our question?
Yes, please.
From the bottom of page 4 to page 5, Branch Rickey explains the many challenges that Robinson would face from players and fans. Using evidence from the text, explain what this passage reveals to you about Branch.
Not about Branch, about his what?
Branch Rickey's
Branch Rickey's, character.
Character, his character. What does this passage reveal about his character? And what were some of your ideas from your group?
Because of his nature and passion for justice, he had to do what he was doing.
Okay, is that evidence that you pulled from the text?
Yes.
Okay, so because of his nature and passion for justice, he had to do what he was doing. And you pulled that from page 4, and there is a paragraph in page 4 that I think really does demonstrate the character behind Branch Rickey and thinking about the idea of perseverance and how Branch Rickey did persevere to make this change, to accomplish this goal. On page 4, he had me transfixed as he spoke. I could feel his sincerity, and I began to get a sense of how much this major step meant to him. Because of his nature and passion for justice, he had to do what he was doing. So how would you define Branch Rickey's character?
That Branch Rickey's character showed that he was really committed and determined to end segregation.
Okay, so that he was committed and determined to end segregation. And how would you describe a person like Branch Rickey? Anyone can answer that. How would you describe a person like Branch Rickey? How would you describe his character? I'll ask one more time. How would you describe Branch Rickey, the figure that the majority of this text describes? How would you describe him? What would you say about his character? Go ahead, Ray. Thank you.
He has a lot of determination and perseverance.
That he has great determination and perseverance. And I think from each question that we've looked at, isn't this a theme throughout? Every question that we've looked at really digs into the perseverance that Jackie Robinson and Branch Rickey had to demonstrate in order to accomplish this goal of ending segregation. Audrey.
He's also kind of like roughly kind because he was kind to Jackie Robinson, much kinder than most people would be at the time. But he also set him straight that, this is your future if you choose to follow me in this step. And he kind of laid down the law, this is what you have to be, this is what you're going to face. but he wasn't mean to him.
He was honest, right? Yeah, absolutely. He was very honest, and he had to be. What I'd like to do at this point, independently, individually, which means by yourself, you're going to open up the Noble Experiment Argument Organizer. What? Eyes on me for a second. Eyes on my screen for a second. So we've completed a close read of the Noble Experiment, and we really dived into the different examples of perseverance and the reasons behind this demonstration of perseverance for both Branch Rickey and Jackie Robinson. At this point, your task is to create a claim. Which figure do you believe better represents the concept of perseverance? Branch Rickey or Jackie Robinson? And it's not an easy choice. Which figure do you believe best represents the concept of perseverance? I'd like you to start by composing your claim, and then together I would like to brainstorm a reason or two as an example before you continue to plan your own argument and to find the specific evidence to support it. At this point, please draft your claim in the appropriate space in the planner. What do you think? Tim, you're saying Jackie Robinson? I just need a claim. Just your position. Jackie Robinson or Branch Rickey, which demonstrated perseverance? The bell is going to ring in about 2 minutes. I'm going to keep you just 5 minutes into Block 8 so we can just get into the evidence portion of this, and then you'll be on your way. You're almost there. I know, Nick is heartbroken. 5 more minutes! We will survive. Okay, walking around, we're actually pretty evenly split. Half of you are arguing Branch Rickey and half of you are arguing Jackie Robinson. Let's go with Branch Rickey as our example. So Branch Rickey clearly demonstrates the traits of perseverance. I'm not saying that Jackie Robinson doesn't. I'm just picking Branch Rickey as the example. So I don't want anyone changing their mind. You go with your gut. What do you believe? So Branch Rickey clearly demonstrates the traits of perseverance. We need reasons to support this claim. After this close reading of this text, after talking about the different pieces of the text, what Jackie Robinson went through, what Branch Rickey went through, why pick Branch Rickey? It's about to get wild out there. Come on. Why pick Branch Rickey? Half of you picked Branch Rickey, so I'm wondering what you're thinking. Emily, what do you think?
Well, because it was really his plan. He just hired Jackie Robinson to do it.
Okay, so one reason to support our claim could be that Branch Rickey organized this new experiment. Branch Rickey organized and he was actually the one responsible for it, right? He was the one that was responsible. And why would being responsible for this experiment possibly be a risk? Elizabeth, what do you think?
His career could have been on the line.
Okay. Is this possibly another reason that we could use to support our claim? What did Branch Rickey have at risk?
His career.
His career. Yeah, his entire life. 35 years since the moment he was a college coach in that hotel in 1910. 35 years it took him to get to being the president of the Brooklyn Dodgers. And he was willing to give all that up. And why was it a risk, Elizabeth?
Because he could have lost his job, and it took him a long time.
Why would he lose his job?
Because he was helping black people try to get into baseball, which they weren't allowed
Let's
to.
use the text. What do we see in the text? I'm looking specifically at this passage here on page 4, top of page 4. We can't fight our way through this, Robinson. We've got no army. There's virtually nobody on our side. Peter, what do you think?
Nobody's going to be with them. Everybody's going to be against Jackie Robinson playing.
Yeah, absolutely. And if they're against Jackie Robinson playing, and if they figure out that Branch Rickey organized it, Tim?
His life could be on danger and his career, but I think his life could be too, because people I think they would be really mad at him. I think it would be that on a level where they hated any blacks or anybody who hated or anybody who helped them too.
Right. So he knows what he's up against, right? Branch Rickey walked into this knowing the kind of opposition that he was going to face. He knew there was nobody on his side. No umpires, no owners, no newspapermen, nobody. But he still did it. I want you to take the next couple of minutes, take a look at your own claim. What reasons can you brainstorm to support that claim? And what specific evidence can you use to support your reasons? I have my example up on my screen. I'd like to see your reasons and evidence to support your claim. You may use my example, yes. Yes, I'd like to see different evidence, though. There's tons. What can you find? If he's responsible for it, why is that a risk? Why does that demonstrate perseverance? What did you find, Kyle?
This one.
There's virtually nobody on our side yet. Okay, so you selected Jackie Robinson. And what's your first reason?
The first reason was that he could not retaliate against people.
And what do you have from the text that could support that this would demonstrate perseverance?
Is that the first time Jackie Robinson and Branch Rickey met, when they asked him if he had the guts to not let go.
You have the guts. Yeah, absolutely. And it did take guts, right? Okay, you also picked Jackie Robinson. And what was your first reason?
That he not only persevered in his time when he became baseball, but all of his life he was tormented through his skin color. And I think when he's talking about how he was 20 years old, but all his life, even back to the age of 8, he was tormented.
That's an excellent example from the text, and this is a great point that his entire life he's been dealing with segregation and racism. And back to when he was 8 years old, a little girl calling him a racial slur. I mean, those memories stick with someone, and he had to deal with that his entire life and then have the entire world against him. It's hard. Okay, tomorrow, I'm going to ask you to pause where you are. Tomorrow we're going to continue the investigation of these two figures. Whomever you selected, whether it's Jackie Robinson or Branch Rickey, we're going to continue to pull evidence to support that claim, because eventually this is great practice for your perseverance presentation. You're going to have to find evidence to support a claim that your figure better represents perseverance than any other. This is excellent practice for that. I want you to keep Branch Rickey and Jackie Robinson in your mind as possible potential figures of perseverance. If you are interested in Jackie Robinson or Branch Rickey, these would be excellent candidates for your perseverance presentation. If you could go ahead and log out of your Chromebook.